Hi, my friends. Welcome back to Healing Together, a YouTube channel dedicated to God stories. And today we're here for the third episode in the story of Dan and Kathy and how God has worked in their lives and how God has put together a 47-year marriage and how He has brought healing, He has brought hope, He has brought an example of how we also shall live. I want to tell you, today is a turning point. And I want you to listen for a couple things. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I want you to listen for a couple things. First of all, listen to Kathy's resolve to endure. She, as you listen to it, and she won't talk about it very plain, as far as here's what I resolved to do. But in her conversation, you hear that she has a resolve inside of her to carry on and to live for Jesus Christ. Kathy has seen the world. She has seen godly marriages destroyed. And she has made a commitment to remain firm in her faith and take care of her and her children. Number two, I want you to hear the resolve in her to forgive. It amazed me as I listened to her before the divorce was even to the point of finalization, which it never happened, but before the divorce, it got close, but she was already praying that God would help her to forgive not only Dan, but to forgive the woman who Satan was using to try to destroy their marriage. Then I want you to hear Dan's change of heart. And I want you to hear the softening, and I want you to listen for the tool that God used for that. That's important. Then I want you to pay attention to the fact that no matter what, and my friend, this is for you, no matter what, God never gives up on us. God never gives up on me. And He never gives up on you. He did not give up on Dan. He did not give up on Kathy or Seth or Amber. He stayed faithful to them. He never stopped working. He never stopped manipulating their lives and creating victory for them. Pay attention, my friends, to how long this battle went on. It was years. It was not over when it looked like it was over. Satan was still sticking his head up and trying to get a wedge in there. Come along. This is restoration today. So please come along. Hear the rest of the story. This part of the story, we're going to hear another thing again next time, but hear this part of this story and the victory that takes place. Thank you, Jesus, for victory in our lives. Let's hear Dan and Kathy as God puts their lives back together and makes them a family again. Enjoy.
I didn't want to go through life with bitterness and anger and hate, resentment. I didn't want any of that. And so right off the bat, I asked God to help me forgive Dan, whether or not we ever got back together. And then I asked Him to help me forgive her, because I didn't want to carry that for the rest of my life. And I believe He did. I believe God helped me do just that. Later on, I'll tell you what happened that was only a God thing. Because in my own strength, I want people to understand, in my own strength, I can be a snot. And I've got a little bit of a temper. And I could have easily held. I could have easily resented. I could have easily, all these years, held it over Dan's head. But God, that's the story of my life. But God. And so, anyway, I just asked God to guide me. I was so weak right then, just so messed up, I couldn't even hardly think. And I knew I needed him or I wasn't going to make it. So I was doing the budget, and Seth and Amber were in bed, and I believe God woke Seth up because I had slid down in this apartment, slid down the wall crying because I couldn't balance anything. Nothing matched. There wasn't enough. And Seth got up, and he came into the kitchen, and he sat down on the floor with me. And mind you, he's only 14. And he said, "What's wrong, Mom?" And I'm, "Nothing. Oh, nothing's wrong. Everything's fine." And he said, "Mom, we're in this together." And I said, "Well, it's just the budget says." And I will never forget, his eyes flashed, and he looked at me and he said, "But that's not what God says, is it, Mom?" It's really something when your kids put it back into you. But I needed to hear it right then. And I knew that was one instance. And then another time it was getting right down to the wire, and I knew that we didn't have very many more days before things were going to get really serious here. And I remember I was kind of lost. I mean, Pastor Joe and Sharon were they just held me up. That's all there is to it. They just held me up. But I remember I called Pastor Glenn Mitchell, back home at Warsaw Assembly of God, Abundant Life, because I knew him. I was his secretary too, by the way. And I told him, I said, I don't even know what to do. I said, he doesn't want to talk to me. Dan does not want to talk to me. And he said, "Kathy, you guys aren't just people from my church. You're my friends too." And he said, "Call him one more time." And I said, "Pastor Mitchell, he does not want to talk to me." And he said, "Call him one more time and I'll be down on my knees." So I called Dan at work. And I said, "Danny, can we just talk?" And I'll never forget, it was cold as ice. And this is before cell phones and you had to hold the phone in your hand, you know. And he said, "I don't think we have anything to talk about, do you?" And it was just cold flat. And I said, "Danny, please." And I started to say something else, and all of a sudden, Dan's voice, got soft. Now, mind you, he had just said, "I don't think we have anything to talk about, do you?" And his voice got soft, and he said, "Can I call you right back?" And I remember taking the phone and going like that, because his voice was a little more tender, and I'm thinking, and I thought maybe somebody had come into his office or something. And I said, "Okay." And not believing he would. I didn't believe he'd call me back. And when he did, he called back probably, 10 minutes later. And he said, "I just want you to know that it's over." And I'm still thinking he's talking about us. And I said, "Danny, please, can't we just talk?" And he said, "I told her I can't lose my family, and I can't lose 16 years of marriage." And then I'm confused. And and I mean, my mind was just whirling by then, and I didn't know if I had imagined what I was hearing. I was just really messed up right then. And his voice was still soft, and I'm still in a daze, not knowing what to say. And he said, what have you got planned tonight?" And his voice is so tender, and I'm thinking, I don't even know who I'm talking to right now. And I said, "Well, I've got to go to work tomorrow." By then I'd gotten a full-time job. And I said, I got to go out and do laundry. And I had to actually take it out to a laundromat by then, you know. And he said, I have a washer and dryer here in the apartment if you and the kids want to come over. And I thought, oh no, no, we're not playing that game. Because I had all sorts of red flags going up. And he knew exactly what my mind was feeling. And he said, the kids and I'll sleep out in the living room and you can sleep in the bedroom. And I thought, okay. And the kids, if you ask the kids, they said that I was like a teenage girl getting ready for the first date. That I was just dancing around the apartment. I was so excited. Scared, but excited. And I hauled the laundry over, and it was already in the evening. And I'm putting laundry in, and I'm tired, and I got to go to work the next day. And I went in and laid down in the room that he told me I could sleep in, which was his room. And I said, I'm just going to lay down for a second, and I'll get up when I hear the buzzer go off. And all of a sudden, you know how you just feel somebody near you? And he was sitting on the edge of the bed, and my heart was and talk about praying. I was praying, God, please, please, please help me. And I kind of turned to look at him, and he leaned down and he kissed my cheek. Well, then I'm very concerned, and I wanted him, and I wanted him back, but I wanted it the right way, and I didn't want it to be just a feeling. And he reached down to kiss me again on the cheek, and I said, Danny, please don't use me. And he said, I promise I will never use you again. And I'll never forget that we kissed, and Amber came in to tell me something, and she went because she saw Dad kissing Mom, and Seth came in behind her and pulled her out and shut the door. That's as far as I'm going with that. But,
So-
God started the healing process then.
So what changed, Dan?
Well, I remember I was thinking about that. I had gone on a vacation with this particular individual, and I remember on the plane coming back, I had just got on the plane, sat down, and Seth had wrote me a letter, our son, wrote a letter to me, and basically was, Dad, I can't believe you're doing this, you know, to me, or to us, and to Mom and to us. And I think that was the beginning of the change, because I realized it was like something, like somebody snapped their fingers in front of me, and it's like, woke up. I'm not saying that everything changed around that quickly, but it was a beginning of, I knew I was miserable, but it's like in any sin, sometimes you don't know how to break the addiction or the bondage that you're in until somebody tells you, because before anybody was trying to tell me, I get real defensive. And like I said, when that letter that Seth wrote, it's like, okay, what am I doing? You know, why am I doing this? Because like Kathy said, I knew in my mind I didn't want to wreck 16 years of marriage, and we didn't have a bad marriage. It was just that our world fell apart, you know. So I think that was the beginning of change. I don't know exactly. I know it was over the summer months, and then it wasn't too long after that when she called me that night. And I can still remember the call. When she called me, I can remember my tone of voice. I can remember my attitude was pretty. It was very nasty. I would pick apart everything with her. I would tell my mom and dad how bad a person she was. And then, like I said, that next few minutes, I believe it was people praying, not only the pastor, but people praying for me. letting me see, because my eyes were clouded.
Mm-hmm.
What, again, it was about my happiness. And just as fast as it started, it was over.
For real.
For real.
So what boundaries did you set at that point? What walls did you build? What protections did you give in your mind, specifically at work?
Well, first off, it was hard to go back because we were still in the same office.
Mm-hmm.
And the department, when you work in the same department, you got to walk by this person's
Mhm.
desk every day. The good thing that happened, which I know it was a God thing now, we had gotten back together, and again, our finances were in an uproar. And I decided to go back, try to get back into what I was doing before. And so I went and applied at a company. Long story short, they hired me. Now, we had been off, and again, it was a God thing. There was 6 weeks of time that they were going to ship 6 managers nationwide, and I was going to be one of them, to Detroit
From Service Master.
from Service Master, and worked 7 days a week with no increase in salary. Yeah. And we had already come from a small town in Indiana to Chicago area, and our world had fallen apart. We just got back together, and I thought, God, there's no way that I can uproot and go to Detroit. And I said, I don't know if this is part of your plan, but I'm trying to do this right, because I messed up. But I want to make sure that if it is your will, then you're going to have to make this work, because I'm not working 7 days a week. Well, anyways, I went and applied, and they hired me, like I said, for $7,000 less than what I was making,
And we were already dying.
or $9,000 less than what I was making. And we were already dying to begin with. But they let me stay home for 6 weeks, so they were having trouble getting us into it was a union plant. They didn't want Service Master in. To make the story short, that 6 weeks we were home, they paid us to stay home. And then, of course, I ended up going to the company I was at, and
Which was copier related.
copier related. And I ended up retiring there last year, 29 years. But what the cool thing about it was that again, I got going there. Had I gone to Detroit, I found out afterwards that about a year after those managers went, they all were pulled out of the plant. All had lost their jobs, and I would have been one of them.
Mhm.
So we would have been stuck in Detroit
Mm-hmm.
and stuck in a place that I didn't want to be. So God worked around in that such a short time frame, but
And then the new job, God blessed with the raise,
yeah,
remember?
we had our income was really low, and
Probably
year and a half later, there was, and I had been in supervisory role, I'd been in management role before, and there's a supervisory role that came up in the company, in our branch, and there was 13 people applying, and I was the newest guy of all of them. Now, I got to back up here real quick, too. The guy that hired me was, I believe, a godsend, the manager that hired me, because he believed in me. He didn't know me from Adam, but he got me on, and he's the one that promoted me to supervisor. So my salary increased in that time frame. Well, it had already gone up from the tech I started out at, from the level I was at. They had certain levels. The highest you'd get was level 5. And they put me at 3 because, again, they didn't know me. In that 2-year time frame, or that year and a half, I had doubled. I had gone up major in salary. And then they promoted me to supervisor, and I doubled my salary within 2 years. Again, another God thing. So you knew it was God thing. Plus, I knew it wasn't God's will for us to go to Detroit. So we ended up staying wherever we're at. Just trusting God that He would work it out, and He did at that time.
So Kathy, I want to back up just a little bit. What was Satan saying to you while you guys were split up?
That I wasn't worthy. I wasn't worth fighting for. I had to have messed up somewhere.
How did you fight that?
I didn't.
Didn't you?
I
No.
I was too weak. I was too weak. I had lost so much weight. It was bad. But my family, my mom, my brother and my sisters, they were probably my biggest cheerleaders. Family is a wonderful thing when they come around you like that. You know, I mean, all they could do was just reinforce who they knew I was, you know. But you know, one of the things that I want to say too is that when we got back together, Satan wasn't done yet. I remember I worked for a doctor's office, and we needed to leave the apartment that Dan rented. We couldn't afford it. It was just, it was terrible. Everything was terrible. And there was a woman that had, they called it a garden home. It's like a duplex with one more. And she was renting it. And God just opened the door for us to be able to get that. And we were able to start healing there. And it cost less, so we were able to manage it a little bit better. And I remember we had just been there maybe a couple of weeks, and I got the phone bill. And there was a phone call. It's funny now. Everything's funny now. It was not funny then. There was a call to Clinton, Iowa, and one to Poland. Don't ask, I don't know. That's just what was on the bill. And immediately, Satan attacked my mind. See, it's not over. He's not done with her yet. I fell completely apart. My mom was visiting that weekend. That wasn't pleasant for her, I'm sure. And I remember calling the phone company, just asking. I don't even know what I was asking. I was so messed up. And the woman on the other end said, "Yeah, I see these calls on your line." And I'm thinking, and the way she worded it was, "I wonder if there's two lines here." Well, then I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he put in a separate line. You know, I mean, Satan can put stupid things in your head and make it just blow out of proportion, you know. And Dan's at work, mind you. He has no idea all this is going on in my head. And finally, she puts me on hold. And she comes back and she said, "Did you just move in this place?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I think these calls just didn't get transferred from the old phone." See how the enemy works? There was a perfectly logical explanation, but Satan floods your mind with lies. Anything to disrupt, anything to pull apart. So the minute Dan walked in from work, he was confused because I grabbed him and hugged him and told him I was sorry and started crying. He's thinking, what? And I told him I was so sorry for doubting him. But so it wasn't always over, you know. Little things would come up and we'd have to work through it. One time we were sitting at Calvary Church in Naperville. That's where we ended up going. And Dan was in the choir. And we always sit near the front because I get just really, really distracted if I sit in the back. Because if you get up to go to the bathroom, I'm thinking, well, that's stupid. You should have gone before you.
Mind wanders.
And then I lose what the pastor's saying and everything. So we usually sit up near the front. And he came down from the choir, and all of a sudden he's got his arm around me, and he's rubbing my arm and pulling. And I'm thinking, would you get a hold of yourself? What is the matter with you? And church is over, and we get out in the car, and I don't know where Seth was, but I remember Amber was in the back seat, and he starts the car, and he's not moving. And I look over at him, and all of a sudden he shuts off the car. And I'm thinking, oh boy. And he said, I promised you that I would never lie to you again. And then my heart's going, oh boy. And he said, I think she was here today. Because he could see from the choir. And I looked at him and I said, Danny, I didn't just forgive her. I mean, forgive you all those years ago. I forgave her too. It doesn't mean I want to be her best friend. It probably doesn't mean that I wouldn't try to take her out in Jesus' name. That's not a very godly thing to say, but it is what I felt.
We'll give you a special
There you
dispensation.
go. But so he was honest, and there was things like that. Well, then it didn't stop because there was probably
3 times.
3 times in there that she tried to contact him. Now we're putting our life back together. The last time was right before Amber got married. We're planning Amber's wedding. So we'd been married, it'd been 10 years. It'd been 10 years then, because we'd been married 26 years by then, I think. And he always took me to the train station, and we always pulled up in this little cove thing, and he'd just leave the car running, and we'd talk until I saw the train coming. And all of a sudden, he shuts off the car again. It's an awful thing when he shuts off the car. I never know what's coming when he shuts off the car. And he said, I got to tell you something. It's the way he starts conversations that makes my heart race. And he said, she tried to contact me again. And he said, she sent an email actually to my work. And he said, I'm not sure even how she got a hold of that. So I said, do you want me to reply? And he said, would you? And I said, oh, yeah. So I went to work. I still have the email exchange. I just sent her a note, and I let her know that it's been several years now. And I said, every time that you contact him, it just messes up our world. It brings back memories of us almost losing our marriage, our home. And I said, I want you to know that Dan's not the only one that I forgave all those years ago. I forgave you too. We've moved forward, and we've raised 2 great kids. And I said, it's time for you to move forward too. And she replied, and she said, I didn't mean to cause any trouble. I was just trying to say hi to a friend. And in my mind, I'm saying, well, he's not your friend. Okay. And she said, I promise I will never contact him again. And she never has. But I believe that had I not early on asked God to help me forgive not only Dan, but forgive her too, that I wouldn't have been able to have that kind of exchange.
Absolutely.
Right.
So people have asked me over and over and over, how did you forgive him? And I have to say, it wasn't me. It wasn't my, it wasn't me. It was Christ in me. He allowed me. He gave me the strength. He gave me the power to forgive and to go on. I don't need to hold anything over Dan. It's gone. It's under the blood. God restored our marriage. So I don't need to hold it. I don't need to hold anything against anybody. Now, doesn't mean I won't fight you for him, because I will not. Now I'm smarter. I will fight you for my man.
Exactly. Good.
Good
Good.
stuff, guys.
So you put your marriage back together and bought 3 houses. Tell us about that.
Gee, many Pete.
And the story of 3 houses is for next time. We will come back and we will hear that story of how they have had multiple houses at multiple times, how Satan is still not done, and they have restored, God has restored their marriage, and things are put back together there, but life still continues to be a struggle. So come back, my friends, again on Tuesday, and we will begin the story of 3 houses, and we will hear what God does next. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you haven't hit that like button, please do. If you've not subscribed, please do. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for stopping by. See you on Tuesday. God bless.